First up is Fate Stay Night. If you guys have heard of Fate Zero, you should probably check this one out first.
The original one that's done by Dean, and we all know how much everyone loves Dean. I think it was a good starting point for the series. It got people excited for it, but at the same time it still had all the problems of what regular anime had to face.
Took the idea of something like the Holy Grail Wars and make it into something that's incredibly interesting. And if you look deeper into the mythology of the heroes that are within this series, you start noticing that this actually is fairly interesting. I like Fate Zero a bit more because it seems like a bigger, more broad, important battle compared to Fate Stay Night, which was like a bunch of teenagers beating the shit out of each other with sticks. One Note character is the main character. He's like the paladin of all anime characters. He just wants to be the good guy.
Crappy school settings, annoying teenage protagonists, and you could sense that there was some potential here, but they just weren't really tapping into it, especially due to crappiness of the studio.
Iffy plot twists, there's a harem, the youngest girl is like 8. The action scenes were sort of like one is holding his sword, the other is holding his, and they're shooting energy beams to each other, and they sound like they're taking a dump, like, "Ugh, I'm stronger now," and the other one is like, "Ugh," and yeah, I didn't like it.
Check it out. It's a fairly good action shonen.
Overall, it wasn't a horrible anime, but obviously they could have been much better, and they did improve it in Fate Zero, but still has its own problems.
Hopefully one day they'll be able to make a Fate Stay Night that really does shine.
I have no hopes for the remake. The school setting just ruins everything. Next up, Origin Spirit of the Past. Gonzo movie.
Another one of those environmental awareness, save the trees, guys, type movies. So it was interesting enough. There was a decent amount of action. The animation was nice, but this is a boring movie. They're definitely not doing a good job keeping you engaged.
I agree, stuff were happening and I just didn't care about anything.
Nerima Daikon Brothers, same creator that did XL Saga and Wallflower. This is kind of like a musical comedy. There's no plot. Replaces plot with madcap comedy action pieces. Joke's pretty funny, but it gets tiresome after a while, so it's a good idea, poorly milked. But hey, it's original for a while, so try it out if you want something a little different.
What's next?
Ayakashi, Japanese classic horror. This was the starting point of one of my favorite series, Mononoke, and pretty much is just a collaboration of short horror stories that are supposed to be classic in Japan. And it was an interesting experimental animation. I'd like to see more stuff like this. They at least tried with their horror. I see a lot of horror anime like Another, and doesn't feel like they're trying at all.
On February, we had Wreck, which sort of stands out from the usual.
Wreck is a short TV series by Shaft.
Ironically, this is directed by the same guy that did Lane and Ghost Town. It's kind of weird.
The premise was pretty interesting. It's definitely a more mature romance story. There's sex involved.
This is about voice actors falling in love with this random guy, but that's pretty much it.
Overall, it was just an interesting experience. It's not really a regular romance story, and definitely wasn't expecting this sort of thing from Shaft.
Looking up at the half moon.
This is a minor 6-episode series. It tries to go for an angsty 90s style romantic drama. Unfortunately, it could have been tragic and it could have been good about two hospital people bonding and about her not making it, but it kind of pulls a cheap shot by using some kind of mysticism based on the book to help pull her through. We didn't get to really focus so much on the Night of the Galactic Railroad. It felt kind of shoehorned in and the ending kind of came out of nowhere. A little melodramatic, but it took itself seriously for the most part, and the characters were developed and the chemistry was there. So it's solid if you want something short and sad.
Hellsing Ultimate. Oh man. Much better reboot of the Hellsing series. Gonzo did the original TV Hellsing. It was freaking crap. The visuals were great. The voice acting was great. Had to wait 6 years for it to finish, but who cares? It was awesome.
Definitely one of the best action anime ever created, but don't expect much of a plot.
One of the stupidest, most violent shows you can find. It's basically contentless violence about Alucard, who is overpowered and can kill anything, killing everything, and just being overpowered about it and sprouting badass things.
No plot, no real characters, but that's okay. Rule of cool, rules in this show. You just have some of the most darkest, ominous action death scenes. You can just tell that the animators were just having fun bringing this to life.
So yeah, it's a violence badass driven show. As far as actual content goes, it's pretty shallow.
Bincho Tan is Studio Dean's attempt at honest cutesiness, and it does it all right. It kind of goes for good visuals. The character designs are kind of crappy, but if you adore their charm and the body language, it's all right. It also is kind of weird by having kids do adult jobs or something like that. It's a little weird, but kind of tries to go for like a baby version of Azumanga or something. It goes for the feels, it's honest about it, but really, if you've seen enough of these, then you can just pass on this.
Moving to March with Ergo Proxy.
Okay, do I even need to state how awesome this series is? It's been hyped over on the RoryCon channel by everyone that is part of the critical overviews, and it definitely deserves what it has.
My all-time favorite show.
One of the greatest, most subtlest, most mature handled anime series to date. It balances metaphysical philosophy with grounded character dramas.
It combines a lot of interesting themes, the meaning of life, what is real, soul, and mix them up with psychedelic and cyberpunk elements.
It's what happens if you get Christopher Nolan to shake hands with Guillermo del Toro and they decide to make some crazy, awesome, gothic, psychological thriller. And although there are a couple episodes that can just be brushed away, can just not even exist, they do add backstory to the characters.
Through the middle of the show, they'll sort of derail from the main story and be exploring the little concepts.
Very rich setting, and it's meant for the careful, studious viewer to look around, see where everything fits. It's one big giant puzzle of a sci-fi show. Very hidden themes, you gotta look around and study an episodes a couple of times. Doesn't go for any cheap shots.
This is a hard series to get into, especially if you're not really into the philosophical and if you're not really paying attention when you're watching the series. It is very rewarding though once you start to really understand what it's about. Just you need to have some patience with the show, and it's not just all random stuff going on.
It has gorgeous animation, it has amazing characters and amazing character development. It's subtle, it's intelligent, and it's everything that I ever asked from an anime.
As a mystery show, thriller, psychedelic, psychological drama, it's excellent. As a sci-fi, it's even more excellent. In almost every single way, Ergo Proxy succeeds.
Moving to April.
Now, Digimon Savers. The main character, he just seems like an annoying brawler, and his Agumon just kind of seems like a New Yorker with a baseball bat saying, "Let's get him, boss." They aren't very interesting. They don't really seem like human characters compared to the ones in Series 3 or any of the ones previously.
I liked how they changed the art style to look a little more shonen-y than for kids, but other than that, okay. The concept was good, but the whole thing just didn't have the magic of the previous seasons.
Kiba was a shonen series done by Madhouse. Not too many people know about it. I think it's because it's really long and really boring. I think the only interesting part was how they summoned their creatures. Kind of felt like Digimon.
The characters in it were completely retards. They defy any sort of logic. Nothing that happens in the show makes the slightest attempt to make any sense or have any sort of tactics. Completely stupid. I got bored of it in just 2 episodes and then I dropped it.
Haruhi has to be probably the first moe and one of the better moes, if only just because this is when anime decided to take the aesthetic of moe and really wrap it around other kind of concepts or layer it. Granted, Haruhi was ruined by its sequels. If you think of Haruhi as like a good idea that they didn't really know how to unfold, it didn't really stand the test of time. It's most you're watching it for historical purposes than anything else. Considering that this anime kind of foreshadowed the doom of today, it's hard to really look back on it with fondness, but hey, it's Haruhi.
It also proves why moe shows are bullshit. You watch a mecha show from the 70s, it's still good today. You watch a moe show from 5 years ago, it's terrible, who's gonna watch it? Nothing in the genre stands the test of time, nothing. True anime fans only like retro shows, the end.
Gintama is like a Shonen Jump-centric fan service parody show. It's not sophisticated enough to be a satire because it never really refers to the setting, even though its setting could have been damn amazing. The characters are extremely scattershot, development is essentially non-existent. Eventually the characters become too grating to the point they're unlikable and all freshness dies within 13 episodes. Yet I watched 50 episodes of this series. The investment is just not worth it, I'm sorry. It's bullshit. As comedy, it's just not funny. Gintama just sucks.
If they have the need to explain the joke jokes to you, then it's not funny. And this show does it all the time. Oh, you see that? That was supposed to be funny. Laugh right now. It's like, why are you telling me this? Just let me laugh by looking at the joke. And most of it is just based on in-jokes of other Jump Shonen. They just make references. It's referential humor. If you're not already a fan of the big three, you're not gonna laugh with this thing.
Simone is a weird concept about choosing your gender as a part of the maturation. Kind of difficult to really attach yourself to it because there's no real theme except about abstaining your decision to grow up. But for 26 episodes, it's extremely filled with filler and dead time. It becomes extremely boring to watch. Another bad thing about Simone is it doesn't really explore its setting as much as it should. It has a weird plot twist during the end, something about time travel, but it's extremely vague and the ending is a freaking pain in the ass to decipher. So, neat idea, but very muddled with its delivery.
Everybody was watching this for the Yuri, not for the setting, and yeah, they didn't even get that. Nice looking airplanes though. Then we have this Wate Wararu Mono.
It has a really interesting premise, and I think where the show really fails is the characters. Now, the main character is a pretty good leader, but overall the side characters are not really that interesting. I think the way the show just goes about introducing the characters and how the premise gets set up, you think it's going to be a lot more epic and building some sort of kingdom, but it just goes into this other place near the end, and there's like these mecha things, and it just gets kind of confusing. But overall, it was just a pretty ambitious show, and it's worth watching, but it does have its problems. So.
You know it's based on a porn game, right?
It's a pretty decent porn game.
Yeah.
One of the more surprising animes I've ever seen, if only just because I wasn't expecting a visual novel adaptation to be, I don't know, kind of serious. We have an amnesiac, I know, it's a little overused, an amnesiac who, instinctively knows how to lead. He likes women, but he primarily just likes one heroine. It's kind of tactic-based, it's a very light version of 12 Kingdoms. The ending's kind of shoehorned, a little improperly paced, but it's decently foreshadowed. It's a nice watch if you want something exciting and something decently mature.
Air Gear has always been a guilty pleasure of mine. It's one of the most fan-servicey shonens out there. The characters are pretty interesting. They all seem to have some reason for being there. The action sequences are pretty cool. They need to actually use tactics to beat their enemies, so that's pretty interesting. All the characters have unique personalities, and the art style for a shonen of its time was pretty cool. I'd probably give it maybe a 6.5 or a 7. It's fairly good. I mean, fan-servicey or not, it was a pretty heartwarming series to me.
Higurashi no Nakokoroni, or When They Cry. It's quite possibly the best visual novel adaptation, and also one of the best horror animes, if only because it got the suspense right, it got the character edginess right, and even its narrative style has a sense of progression about it. The characters die multiple times, but it's all part of seeing the greater mystery about what if we did this instead of that. So it's extremely edgy, very unpredictable, and yes, it suffers from a bad second season for its anticlimactic ending, but this right here by itself was a very engaging watch. I look back at this show with fondness, if only because of how different and thorough they approached it.
What Zach failed to tell you is that, to the most part, Higurashi is also about more blobs doing bullshit everyday slice of life nonsense, and the whole thing repeats like 50 times throughout the show. You have to tolerate a lot of that if you want to get to the mystery part, and even that it's mostly, you know what I'm gonna say, shock factor! Plus it's made by fucking Dean. Those visual effects are horrible, and the artwork in general was weak ass. Hardly as good as it could have been.
Nana has to be the most sophisticated, the most mature, most refined, most explored, slice of life, romance, adult anime. Basically, two very different women, and how their lives have changed one another indirectly and directly. Good cinematography, great budget, overall excellent art, very developed characters. They have to create their own original ending because the authors decided to take a break. I could call this a masterpiece of its kind. Zegapane, one of my favorite sci-fi anime ever. How in the first 5 episodes you think it's gonna be one of those one Saturday morning cartoons, but then in just 5 episodes you have characters instantly reacting in the most realistic way possible at their premise, the implications and the controversy that surrounds it. I just love how it just sets up the horror, the tension, the emotional suffering that these characters have to be when surrounded with their reality or lack thereof. The ending is one of the most satisfying, cathartic endings ever faced for this kind of huge, ambitious epic of a sci-fi show. And this is probably their last greatest show Sunrise did, so certainly recommended.
One of the most unappreciated shows of all time suffers from the same problem Shinsekai Yori did. It is extremely mature and well done, but it's very slow and it's not full of explosions and boobs and all that crap. So yeah, just like Shinsekai Yori was overshadowed by Sword Art Online in its own year, this one was overshadowed by Code Geass. But really, you see the antithesis, and this one is by far one of the best mecha of all times. It's, mostly subtle and easygoing, but it's really, really satisfactory in the end of it. I highly recommend it myself.
We gotta watch out for the pacing a little bit, it gets a little dry, but it's all for that character immersion. Definitely watch this.
Well, lucky for us, all us here animalitists have watched it and appreciate it for what it is.
I haven't seen Zega Painting.
Oh my god, what are you
I
doing?
need to watch it.
Shame on you.
Or in high school post club. This series is funny as hell. It does great with the kind of humor it's trying to go for. You know the show was originally made for girls, but you really couldn't stop watching because it was such a fun anime.
The characters' eccentric personalities wreak tons and tons of humor. It's almost like a more sensible version of School Rumble.
Oh man, I did not like this one. I know a lot of people praise the show for being like, one of the best shoujos, and I'm just not really into the genre. Like, all the bishonens are surrounding her. It just kind of felt like an otome game. I admit some of the humor is okay, but overall the show didn't really work for me.
It's a deconstruction of reverse harems. That's pretty much all there is to it. No other reverse harem tried to stand out like this one did, so yeah, it is special for its kind.
I don't know. I don't feel like I love it as much as I should, or appreciate it as much as I should, but, it's recommended just because it's funny and it made me laugh considering I am not its target audience.
Witchblade is actually an adaptation of a Western comic into an anime. It was pretty interesting to see at first, and obviously she has her costume, which is pretty much the draw of the series. A lot of people say how it's like a great mother and daughter story, and I just didn't really feel it that much. Like, it does have its moments, but at the same time, like, the fan service aspect just kind of ruined it for me. And obviously it's Gonzo, so yeah.
Next is Triple X Holic, kind of a show about exorcism. It's a pretty interesting series. It's very character-oriented.
I think this anime gets bashed a lot because of its character designs. Really skinny limbs.
Noodle people.
It just looks pretty ridiculous. But at the same time, the show wasn't too bad as far as an episodic supernatural mystery show goes. It gets boring at times, and the main character is not really that great. He does evolve later on, but that's more in the manga. Now, if you're into episodic shows and supernatural type stuff, I think it's a pretty decent show. Still, those character designs are really bad.
Glass Fleet is Gonzo's attempt to make a space opera, and boy, they fucking fail horribly. This was nonsense. They were just sniffing glue, and they were just thinking up shit to put into the show. This random universe about nobles and peasants living in floating islands in the middle of space, and apparently there is breathable air in the middle of nowhere, and magical ships are firing away beams, and they call that tactics. I really have nothing much to say about this show. It's just complete nonsense, and it's a shame to what a good space opera can be all about, so don't even try it. Gonzo sucks.
Black Lagoon. So this is probably one of the most popular action anime. It's like pure action because, sometimes you have action, and then you have schools, and then you have comedy, and then you have romance and crap. And this is just like a pure action series through and through, and badass female characters. Story wasn't really that complicated or interesting, but it serves its purpose.
Anime trying to be Hollywood, the closest that they've gone to a very Tarantino-style action. It's got good character immersion. The animation's top-notch. Good dark colors, but unfortunately the characters kind of stand still after a while. It gets to a point where once you learn enough about everything and start moralizing about it, then it just kind of gets dried up, and they move from one scenario to another. It doesn't really have too much of a plot progression, and the villains are way too fetish based or too gimmicky based. I mean, I'm giving them credit in the fact that they're actually people with agendas, but considering that they don't really change or they don't really affect the main characters, it gets old real fast. Novel for the first season, but then later are only for the hardcore fans.
I personally don't think much of it, but Rory and Zach seem to really like this one, and they seem to forget that Orobuchi had his hand on this one. So I'd probably rethink your guys' opinion of Orobuchi just a little bit.
All of a sudden, I no longer like it. Duos say Planet of the Beast King.
Now, it was an action show, but at the same time it was kind of had these politics going on.
Same author that did Toward the Terra. This is one of Bones' better adaptations, I suppose, but the ending is extremely ill-matched. Not to mention that it has an improperly placed time skip that kind of downplays the development of when the main character was a child. And the premise of a world actually being able to kill you, it just glosses over everything.
It tries to be this really unique and interesting survival anime, but it falls flat. The first half is fairly decent, but the time skip ruins the whole show. All the necessary progression that the protagonist had to go through to become the Beast King is completely skipped, so it's the opposite of show not tell. And we get a bunch of ass-pull plot twists out of nowhere, and the characters are just so poorly developed and when they die, you just really don't give a shit.
A very disappointing watch overall.
Hack Roots falls victim of the milking syndrome, where you're trying to make another season to something that doesn't deserve a continuation. The original was fine for its time, it was very deep and very mature, very slow in pacing, not many things were happening, just mostly dialogue based, and the music was awesome. And now they're just trying to rehash the whole thing with barely interesting music, barely deep themes, and the whole thing is just a revenge story about some guy who got butthurt in video games, even though he's not even trapped in them. And yeah, the visuals improved, everything else is just fucking lifeless. It can't even be compared with the original one, so no, a very mediocre and needless continuation to the franchise. And here on they're gonna keep on doing that with extra OVAs and movies that are just rehashing the exact same idea of people being trapped in video games. And it becomes a joke, and now it became a trend. Sword Art Online this, Log Horizon that, oh fuck you. The original was fine, they should have left it there. Move to June.
Hachi was Sispa. They don't take themselves very seriously. It's just a really off-the-wall comedic, and poop is now the only source of energy, and you have to give these drugs to make people poop, and they get like addicted to these drugs, so they're trying to find these like laxative type drugs. And yeah, it's just really crazy, really fun.
Flag, directed by the same person that did Botom's Gasaraki and Blue Gender. This has to be one of the most politically correct, mature mecha treatments of wartime today. If you're watching this for the strict military fan service, you're going to get tons of it. There's two main characters, one who is in the thick of the war and one who is studying the soldiers fighting it. These two sides provide a very good documentary-like study of war and the people that are constantly in it. If you want straight, mature setting immersion, you're going to get tons of it here, but the characters are mostly just symbols. It's a very engrossing watch, and certainly no other anime tried to do this. Only Ryosuke Takahashi would do something like this. But when we say Ryosuke Takahashi, we mean very, very slow pacing. Very little plot. Moving on to July. Familiar of Zero. This is just bullshit about some lowly protag who doesn't deserve to be a romantic heroine, who brings in a guy from another world, and he's a failure, lots of abusive fan service, rom-com bullshit. Romance is totally forced, you don't care about anything, the setting, really bullshit, magic isn't fun or exciting, it's just bad.
AKA it's based on a light novel.
And the only reason why I was able to finish it is just because I was thinking, hey, maybe it could get kinky enough, or maybe there might be some kind of main hero development, but no, just magic solutions left and right, without any attempt to make sense.
It has Reiko Gimiya voicing a loli tsundere, you expect sense?
Stupid JC staff.
This was the year of Welcome to the NHK, one of the most character-driven, heavy-hearted series I've ever seen.
My favorite anime of all time. A very surprising watch that made me stop liking shonen as much as I did and make me try to get into seinen. And, quite possibly, Gonzo's greatest anime achievement.
The characters in it are likable, the show is funny, it doesn't insult its own humor, it keeps on going with what it's going for. Sometimes it's going to be a feel-good, but most of the time it's going to be a dark comedy. These characters are having a horrible time with their lives.
So this is probably the most realistic look at otaku life in anime. They don't hold back any of the darker parts of the series.
Shutting yourself in, suicide, religious cults, the general lack of purpose.
Shows like Watamote or Genshiken, they try to make it realistic, but I think it's more for comedic purposes. NHK, they does it more for realistic purposes, and because of that, it gets really depressing.
One of the few shows that manages to perfectly pull off a concept revolving around the otaku lifestyle. Unlike other shows of a similar nature, NHK is very honest with itself and manages to stay very genuine throughout. Rather than glorifying the otaku culture like other anime such as Orimo, NHK takes a much more serious approach by offering a darker view on the life of a hikikomori. The humor in NHK is mostly dark humor, but the jokes are spot on. The characters are memorable, and it's downright an amazing show.
But when the show needs to be serious, you know when it's serious, and it becomes very heavy, very emotional. It is one of the best animes I've ever seen.
Brave Story. For Gonzo trying to make a kids movie epic, this one could have been good, if only there was an actual point to the main character going to a fantasy world. Here, it's just mostly because he's interested in seeing a guy who looks very Haru from Neon Genesis, kind of making it seem like he's a gay. It's just so freaking forced, and you don't really get to know any of the fantasy characters, and for the main character to even bother being in this fantasy world just to save some guy he's just curious to meet. So there's no drama, there's no tension, and the ending doesn't feel satisfying at all.
The girl who leapt through time.
It's another Mamoru Hosoda. This is the guy that did the Digimon movie.
I'm not a big fan of his work, and this debut movie didn't really do much for me.
It's a pretty interesting movie because it is romance presented in a crappy slice of life moe shape. I think because of this it got a lot of recognition. It was a pretty decent movie, but I didn't really care much for the main character and also her interactions with the other characters.
It has a cute romance and a nifty time travel story.
It's trying to be like a teenage angst time travel thing. The main heroine mostly uses it for selfish purposes, which is fine, but there's not too much drama and tension, and the main twist feels out of place and out of nowhere, improperly foreshadowed, and not too much satisfaction, and the ending was just like, oh, that's sweet. It tries to go for feels, but, we don't get to know too many characters for too long. It's just got nothing too memorable.
There's not that much going on, it's not anything amazing, but if you're looking for some cute romance, I'd recommend it. If not, go watch it on Roxy.
Tales from Earthsea.
Goro Miyazaki's first attempt at making film, and wasn't that good. He had all these resources in front of him, and he still managed to not make it as great as it could have been. Just the story did not feel very Ghibli-ish. I guess that's a word.
Ghibli's worst movie ever. The characters are very dry, there's just no action, the ending doesn't make sense, and it teases us with dragons, so it's a big, epic fail.
August.
Kemonozume. So this is a Masaki Yuasa show, and a lot of people think this is his worst work, but personally I really enjoyed it. It has action and has a lot of dark comedy, and the romance, it feels kind of forced, but at the same time I can believe it.
September. Le Chevalier d'Eon.
Anime's better attempt at trying to do a period drama, at least of this century. We already have Rose of Versailles, trying to have a sense of supernatural manipulation that caused the French Revolution, which is not a bad idea. It's just that it became hard to keep track of which characters were fictional and which characters were not. It was a very muddled show, and it's only for historian purists, I believe. The action's not bad, the character designs are a little lacking, and it's really hard to really attach yourself to any of the characters because they seem so focused with their own setting. It's hard to know them as people. It's a very different kind of watch by anime standards, so it's worth watching if you want something very different from the norm, but it's not the most satisfying. So, hit or miss, watch at your own risk.
Black Blood Brothers.
A semi-decent show about a vampire who is strong, dressed in red-ish color. Yeah, it's sort of similar to Helsing as far as that goes. It's unfinished, but if it went on longer, it might have been a decent show. The story was okay, but because it was unfinished, we didn't get the full juice out of it.
Humans and vampires trying to coexist. Could be good, but we didn't even get half of it.
Boku no Pico completely redefines the entire anime industry, and is arguably the best anime of all time, and a must-watch for all fans of Naruto and SAO. In all seriousness though, the only reason to watch Boku no Pico is for the shock factor, of course.
The cake is a lie.
Moving on to October.
This fucking Puka. Fuck, dude, this isn't even anime. The characters look like they're from fucking South Park. There's just this little girl chasing after Giru. It's one of the worst series I've ever seen. It's like Tom and Jerry, but with if Tom and Jerry were in a relationship or something.
Pumpkin Scissors is a military anime and probably the closest thing we'll ever get to an anime revolving around the daily lives of the military characters in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. It has fairly decent world building, but too many fillers for its own good, and it just ends off on a cliffhanger. Just when it was about to get good, it just completely ended. The main girl is pretty much just Saber from the Fate series.
D-Gray Man. It's like Bleach. Has a more gothic touch to it, I guess. And the villains were interesting. I liked how they focus on the villains. The problem with D-Gray Man is obviously that it's an unfinished adaptation and it's very long. But yeah, D-Gray Man was one of the better shonen to come out in recent years.
It was too slow, it had too many fillers. That was my problem with it.
It's a fairly decent shonen anime, has a heavy focus on world building and tries to be a little bit dark for its kind. It has a decent concept, but the execution feels a little bit rushed and the ending is a cliffhanger. I don't really recommend watching D-Gray Man. If you like the concept, you should probably just read the manga.
Death Note. One of the best psychological series.
Another shine from 2006, is another one of the best series I've ever seen.
Very realistic character designs. Motivations for the characters are believable.
When it comes to psychological thrillers, each of the characters has a good amount of psychology. The main character has a reason for doing what he's doing. I feel like it's more for pride than anything, which isn't really done in animes very often. It's more like, revenge.
A very tense, responsible, and grounded shonen supernatural mystery thriller. You're liking this just for the role reversal of having the main character be the villain? It's a very fun, infectious kind of watch, and one of anime's more successful attempts to have a pure psychological-based, energy-style thrill ride.
Although I do think that the second half is like, just fucking bad.
Obviously, it does have some problems, especially in the second half of the show. But overall, it's just a very enjoyable experience, especially if you're tired of the regular anime crap that you see nowadays.
But at least it does end with the main character getting what he deserves. It's a good gateway anime, just because of its sophistication, its writing, and its consistency. It's one of the most popular anime because it was able to do this. Unfortunately, the director went on to make Attack on Titan.
Boo. Intrigue in the Bakumatsu.
It was one of the most fucking boring shows I've ever seen. There was literally nothing good about this show. It was just so dry in every possible way. The story was extremely slow.
Trying to mix real history with fiction just doesn't work if you just wanna fuck everything up with boring dialogues and random dates nobody really cares about. Goddamn boring bullshit.
Ghost Hunt. One of JC Staff's non-fanservice based adaptations. This is trying to be like a Ghost Hunters reality show. The mysteries are mostly just bullshit, although there's pockets of suspense. You're mostly watching this just for decent character interactions, and it's certainly better than Another, so I'll recommend it over that. If you haven't seen too many ghost shows, it's certainly not horrific, but it's basically nothing special.
Busurenkin is one of the more overlooked shonen series, and I can understand why. It felt very normal in terms of shonen series. It was interesting at the time.
Same writer that did Rurouni Kenshin. I guess he was a fan of Fullmetal Alchemist, if only in just a superficial way, because this uses alchemy to justify its super weapons.
It wasn't a bad show, but the villain was a gay butterfly, and yeah, it existed.
Everybody saw this to be like a combination of Fullmetal Alchemist with Bleach, and since those two were so hyped at that moment, nobody really cared about Busurenkin. But other than that, it's not a bad show, it's just average.
It's mostly an average watch, but the decent pacing and the fun villains and good action ideas make it be a somewhat fun watch. Shonen Omnioji, one of the most removed from the norm anime series I've ever seen. This is trying to be like a very authentic based account of Omniojis, plays out like a shonen, when it could actually play out like something like Moribito, and be very culture based. It's just that there's no plot and there's no sense of danger. It's really hard to know what he's fighting for, so it's a very boring, very uneventful watch. I don't even know why it exists, but it was made by Studio Dean, so it would make sense why it sucks.
I can say something similar about Ghost Slayer Sayashi. It's seinen, it's not shonen, but it's still so weird for its kind. It's supposed to be about monsters slaying people, and they're not really using weapons as much as kanji. They use the ideograms, and they say, well, your name is based on that ideogram, and this is why I can pull out the power out of you based on that. And it seemed good as far as wordplays and mysticism go, but really, it's a very dull show. You're not really watching this because it's an action show, it's a mystery, it's about people being turned into weapons based on wordplays. It's so boring, man. I mean, the idea is very good, but plays out in an extremely uninteresting way, so nah. Very unique as a show, but you're not going to enjoy it. And I don't even mean this in a Shinsekai Yori way.
Canon 2006 version. Main hero just go around helping girls out.
Just like any other Kyoani.
Typical KyoAni bullshit, you know. I was able to like this more than Clannad, if only because the charm of the characters felt more authentic. I felt more honest of a premise, although its ending does not make any freaking sense. It uses the power of magic, because, you know, KyoAni loves magic. Watch it if you're a fan, avoid it if you're not.
Hitman Reborn starts off as a goofball comedy and then all of a sudden tries to become a fighting shonen, but doesn't work out because guess what? It's about mafia babies. In fact, after a while you don't even care about the plot, it's just about Fujoshi fanbaits, where all the boys are drawn in this very bishonen way to be sexy and yeah, look at me grown up now and bullshit like that. The pacing is extremely slow, half of the episodes is about girls cooking, the other half is about stupid people looking gayish so all the girls can like them. Ends incomplete, and after hundreds of episodes nobody was giving a fuck anymore. Very bad shonen.
Kenichi, the Strongest Disciple. kind of reminded me of Karate Kid, except that the main character is extremely pathetically annoying. I cannot relate to him at all, and he takes forever to be sympathetic. He doesn't even have any confidence despite what he does. You know, this show could have been better if it wasn't a comedy, about maybe him acquiring power but not really knowing what to use it for or abusing it.
He's mastering fighting styles very fast just for the sake of not being bullied at school, and that's pretty much all his motivation. That's so weak. And the whole purpose of the villains in this show is to be strong. Teenagers forming gangs and fighting in the middle of the street. Oh, that's so boring. And of course there are all these extreme caricatures where all they're just defined by their breast size or their hairstyle or the way they're dressing. You're not really gonna watch this for the fighting style. Even though they pretend there is strategy in battles, it all comes down to Kenichi having infinite hit points and just magically adjusting to all the fighting styles.
And then the main heroine, his sidekick, is just one stupid of a bimbo. Ugh.
She's supposed to be a dynamic and independent woman, but nah, she's just for fun service, really. She's so stupid! And she likes the main character, so we can have a perfect wife protecting him.
A lot of potential with this, but it's just such a blunt action show. It just wasn't that satisfying to watch, and the pacing kind of dragged on. We already have Hajime no Ippo. There's no need to really watch this.
Kujibiki Unbalanced is a poor attempt to cash in on the fame from Genshiken. It started off as an anime within an anime, and people assume that they can actually make money based on something the Genshiken characters found very good, so the actual anime fans will find it very good as well. And guess what? It was a pile of boring shit. Nobody liked it, it was just a cash cow attempt. There is nothing interesting about it. It was just hype that came out of their asses. Very bad idea. The first Code Geass. Oh boy, here we go.
A lot of people really love this show. Definitely has a draw to it. Like, once you start watching the episodes, it just pulls you in. There's cliffhanger moments at the end of every episode, so you just want to keep watching. Characters are interesting. You don't really get too many anti-hero protagonists. Now, the bad part, it tries too hard to be too many genres, and because of that, it just doesn't have a good focus. It tries to be slice of life, it tries to be romance, tries to be mecha. A lot of the time, this is successful, especially financially, but the quality of your show will go down if you do this.
It's a piece of shit, watch our overview about it.
Rory has like this flaming hatred for Code Geass. It's pretentious as all hell, but Code Geass is a very good war story in my opinion. The main character, he has a good reason for what he's doing. Pretty action-packed anime, and it has some fairly good concepts in it. The first half of it is a 7.5. Second half, it's like Deus Ex Machina bullshit everywhere. I'm gonna have to say second half is probably a 5 or something.
If you're used to more serious anime like Death Note or Galactic Heroes, any retro shows, this will just fly over your head as a dumb fun watch. If you're a shonen person, then you'll think of this as a masterpiece.
It's some fun show. There's not that much intelligent stuff going on in there. You get a fake feeling of tactic, although you mostly don't know the actual tactic. You just see Lelouch commands his army. It had great mecha battles. There were land battles, so that's always interesting because you have a feeling of area. And when I started flying in the second season, it lost the juice.
You only watch Code Geass for the pizza. It lacks focus on the tactics that Lelouch uses to win his battles. The second season is completely horrendous. It has pretty much almost no tactics, it's just like fan service and then power level bullshit.
Kekaishi is yet another supernatural fighting shonen that tries to be different than the usual and falls flat on its face. Its main focus is how the main characters are using magic barriers to fight and defend against monsters. Depending on how you use them, they can be stepping stones, shields, they can be cages to trap the monsters inside. They can even be used to destroy them after they're captured. And slowly along the way they learn new ways and new techniques and new usages for these magic barriers. But you see, that's the problem. At first, the whole thing was a lot more interesting. They had to adjust to the situation. It was mostly them defending against them. Slowly they started using offensive attacks, and then it started to go downhill. It became yet another fighting shonen with them learning new techniques and powering up and slowly finding stronger and stronger monsters. And there wasn't much of a character chemistry. It was just one boy and one girl, and there was this, I don't know, platonic relationship, maybe romantic, maybe not. Nothing else to look forward to besides that. It even ends in a meh way, so yeah. Nice idea, but after a point on, the show just has nothing to show us.
And now we have the Wallflower. Same director as XL Saga. He tries to make a madcap comedy about the premise between a woman who outwardly can look beautiful, but she thinks of herself ugly most of the time. A lot of pretty boys. It's not as funny as, like, say, Or in High School Host Club, because the characters aren't too eccentric enough. It's mostly grounded. There's no real sense of plot, and it doesn't really go anywhere.
So, Bartender. This is an episodic show, so obviously it's not going to appeal to everyone. Definitely has a mature vibe to it. Also kind of depressing to watch, but at the same time it gives you hope for anime because the stories are much more mature than what you would usually see. And even though there's not much character development because it is an episodic show, there is still like the main character and the way he respects the customers that walk in, but at the same time like he managed to teach them a lesson. It was a good show.
009-1, a retro-style episodic action show between a female robot android enacting upon her many assignments. Retro-style artwork. You watch this primarily just because to see a heroine kick ass. You know, there's no plot, tension, it's fun if you like the action, and that's pretty much it. It's all it is.
Moving to November.
I've seen Tokyo Drive, hip-hop oriented, and yeah, it's just very out there. This is much more focused on like black culture, which is a very small niche thing in Japan. It's not something you'd usually find in anime, but yeah, it's there.
Sokyo no Strain. Another one of those oddball animes that look like they have the potential to be a little bit of everything.
No kidding, they literally mixed up every genre there is.
The mecha designs was decent. There's a nice amount of fan service. The drama gets decently handled towards the end, but the ending's a little anticlimactic. I was mostly enjoying this for the unpredictable factor because it could have been anything, but once you finished it, then you just look back and like, didn't really use much of its ingredients very well. And it kind of rushed things, considering it was 13 episodes.
It definitely needed twice as many episodes. It just went too fast, they didn't focus too much on anything. So rather average as a whole.
Freedom. This is by the guy that did Akira, full CGI anime, so that was a great idea. It was just much more tame, very family oriented. Some of the designs for the racing bikes and stuff looked pretty cool, but aside from that, I just did not really enjoy it at all. The CGI was very outdated. It's 2006, so it does not look good.
Baldur Force X Resolution, some kind of weird sci-fi AI horror anime. It was really hard to keep track of what was what, or who was who, or anything, really. I think it was trying to be like lame, or something. Yeah, avoid this. All that was just, wow, Zach hates this anime, and yes, I do.
Paprika, the last thing that Satoshi Kon did. It's pretty much the same theme as most of his other series, is trying to differentiate between reality and delusions or dreams, and in this case it's dreams.
Out of all of his movies, this is just most of him gushing out fan service. Pure imagination, and what happens if we let our dreams come out to the real world. Kind of similar to Paranoia Agent in a way. Here you're just mostly watching it for the wonderful presentation.
Lacks the depth of his previous movies.
Probably one of his lesser works.
And finally December.
Tekon Krinki. This is Studio 4 degrees Celsius anime, so it's very experimental. The art style is not really what you'd see in a usual anime. Pretty much follows these two kids that are named Kuro and Shiro, and like it has this very symbolic nature to the way they develop throughout the show. Kuro is obviously going in a darker direction, becoming kind of morally corrupt, while Shiro is just staying innocent. And it was just one of those kind of movies that you have to think a little to enjoy fully, but overall it was just a pretty interesting experience.
And I think that's it.
Overall impressions of the year, it's had 2 out of 10 of my favorite anime ever, so it's definitely one of the best years. It had Ergo Proxy and Welcome to the NHK, which are both amazing shows. It also had Death Note and Code Geass, which were fun.
2006, that was a pretty good year. Definitely around this time I think anime was nearing its peak in the 2000s.
We had a lot of nice game changer type anime, a lot of anime that could have really paved the way for future types of animes, although unfortunately the fetish gimmicky based easily to sell anime won over. Like Haruhi and Code Geass.
Yes, that's quite unfortunate. I see 2006 as the year when budgets tripled thanks to the Blu-ray technology becoming more widespread and light novel adaptations becoming a trend. This could be a point where anime could be far more than entertainment, but no, they just threw all the budgets mostly for entertainment and not for depth. The medium decided to go for dumb fun instead of intellectual titles. Blu-rays first appeared around 2006, and a lot of pointless milking was going on just to attract people into buying this new storage medium. As we know from the following year, this never came to be, but regardless, the industry showered the field with some completely pointless titles, such as the second Sasami, which is essentially one of the girl characters from Tenchimuyo getting her own show. Unlike what Railgun did with Index, this one didn't do anything to expand its universe and remained a forgettable magical girl comedy. There was also Kujibiki Unbalance, which tried to cash in on the success of Genshiken by creating an anime out of an anime. And it was a completely mediocre school comedy with nothing special about it other than being marketed as it was mentioned in Genshiken. And there was also the second Reservoir Chronicles, which was nothing but a cameo parade of clump characters in a loose storyline with little to no purpose. That's what happens when you run out of ideas and milk the fans out of nostalgia for the time when you still cared. From failures, we have Giniro no Linces and Innocent Venus, which had a post-apocalyptic setting and lots of weird sci-fi ideas with no idea of what to do with them. The more you watch, the more they become unintentional comedies. Nighthead Genesis tries to be this mystery horror thingy, but it is presented in such a boring and irritating way about two bishonens yelling at each other like retards to the point you can't watch more than a few episodes before rage quitting. The third, The Girl with the Blue Eye, is supposed to be a military drama but plays out as one of the most uneventful viewings for people who suffer from insomnia. Tekon Kinkrit has a very uncommon art style, a cool setting and an interesting coming-of-age premise, yet it plays out in a very bizarre way that seems to jump around genres and having sudden personality changes. Interesting as an experimental work, but too short and unpolished to be considered good. Black Blood Brothers tries to be a story about acceptance between vampires and humans, but plays out in a very shonen-like way, so there isn't much depth or seriousness about it. Plus it stops where it starts to get interesting, and just like many other titles around this time, leaves you completely disappointed. Kemonozume is made by the best anime director of all times, the one and only Yuasa Masaki. Yet even he had a misfire in his career by creating this weird Romeo and Juliet story with man-eating monsters. It's too bizarre and hard to follow, without having that much of a thematic variety to care after a while. Paprika is the last movie of Satoshi Kon, and sadly it is also his worst. The theme of reality losing its meaning is present, as it is in all of his movies, yet the way it is presented as a comedy to the most part makes it look too silly and unfocused. It needed either more duration or more theme exploration to feel like something other than a Matrix wannabe. It is the movie of the season and all, but I wouldn't exactly call it above average. And here we go with the fan service bits. Marginal Prince, gay fetish. Gift, eternal rainbow, harem fetish. Love doll, idol fetish. Otokuboku, gender bender fetish. 009-1, fighting chicks in retro style fetish. Brighter than the dawning blue, living under the same roof fetish. Chokoto sister, lolcon fetish. Galaxy Angel Rune, cute galaxy girls doing cute galactic things. Happiness, cute happy girls doing cute happy things. And then we have a few slice of life shows with okay premises that don't get explored much, such as Asate no Huku about girls swapping their ages and learning a lot of stuff out of it, but nothing really special ever happens. Bokuraga Ita, just another school romance you'll forget in a week. Hatarakiman, the lives of workaholics. Interesting, but nothing much happens. Bartender, stories of people in a bar drinking and talking to the barman, trying to find a solution to their issues, and yeah, that's pretty much all they're doing. Then we have a couple of okay action shows, such as Project Blue Earth SOS. If you want some cheesy sci-fi story about silly stuff happening and then stuff blowing up, then check this one out. And Oban Star Racers, an adventure in a space racing setting. It's fun if you accept that this is a show aimed at children, and that the art style is a combination of CGI and European influences. But who cares about those? Let's get to the two highlights everybody wants to hear about. One being the second season of Black Lagoon, which is the best chicks with guns anime ever made, thanks to Madhouse having the highest budget and not holding back on the awesomeness. As for the best title of the season, what else could it be other than Welcome to the NHK, the best otaku-related anime ever made. It's not about escapism and fan service like all the rest of them are. It's not afraid to mention the dark side of hobbies and social outcasts, as well as giving us an insight to how they think and act. It's not super realistic, but compared to the bullshit we get in stuff like Oremo, this is truly a masterpiece. Summer was another fantastic season, not because it had nothing but good shows, that will never happen, but because it had a good distribution of all types of titles, so everybody can find something to enjoy. So, starting from the bottom up, we get Witchblade, an obvious cash grab, aimed to increase the popularity of the Western heroine by presenting her to the Japanese audience dressed as a slut. She's supposed to be a mother and stuff, but will anyone care the way she is dressed? Bayonetta had a similar heroine, but it wasn't pretending to be serious. This one honestly wants you to care and does a shitty job about it. Moving to failures, the worst of which is by far Gandu Musashi. Having the lowest budget imaginable for an action show, it becomes so bad it's not even funny to watch. Naikaku can Ryoku is a low-budget detective story with a protagonist who is supposed to be super cool. Too bad he wasn't moving at all for anyone to notice that and got forgotten immediately. Glass Fleet, the most retarded space opera imaginable, set in a universe where universal constants such as air in vacuum, gravity, and good storytelling do not exist. The Wings of Rian is the third attempt to present something good out of a concept written while someone was high on math. And for the third time, it is completely retarded since it has absolutely no logic for you to care about. Toko follows the tradition of making tasteless casuals to think senseless violence and gore equals mature storytelling. Only this time it did such a terrible job with the plot, it failed to fool people even at that. Coyote Ragtime Show tries too hard to create a mindless space western and completely forgets to have interesting characters or a plot that would make you care about whatever random thing happens in it. Sea Moon has a wonderful setting, funky looking airships, a premise that concerns maturity and important choices in the life of an individual, and yet it manages to somehow waste all its potential in an uneventful plot centered around a bunch of weird looking gender bender lesbians. Kai King is the remake of a very old mecha title, and instead of remaking it cooler in the likes of Mazinger SKL, they instead turn into this childish adventure that feels closer to Pokemon than a blood-boiling action show. The first season of XXX Holic, where Clamp officially runs out of ideas and just does random episodic occult nonsense, centered on weird fetishes. Hack Roots, the sequel to the original trapped in a video game story, is doing the same crap most second seasons do. Better visuals, far less content, and an ending that tells you to go play some video game. No thanks. Demon's Bane, where the scary Cthulhu mythos becomes a retarded mecha anime with fan service. Trust the Japanese to make a porn game out of such a thing. Blood Plus, a story about a female vampire hunter, of sorts. The plot as a whole is okay, but they could have told the whole thing in a quarter of the episodes, and it would still feel dull because the action is simple and the drama is too much. Plus those red lips are killing me. It's better than the bullshit remake "We ran out of ideas" Clamp made later on, but the time you need to invest in it is simply not worth the reward you get out of it once you finally finish it. The last two failures of the season have a lot in common. Brave Story is a dull fantasy adventure movie you watch and forget, and Tales of Earthsea is a dull and messy fantasy adventure movie you watch and wish you could forget. And then people wonder why Ghibli went under. And now moving to the wonderful section of fan service. Tonagura, mindless ecchi with schoolgirls. Inukami, mindless ecchi with priestesses. First season of Koisuru Tenshi Angelique, reverse harem with magic flavor fetish. Air gear, rollerblades and pantsu fetish. Ramen fighter Mickey, delivery girl fetish. Tsukiyo Kiss, theater actresses fetish. Love Get Chu, voice actresses fetish. First season of Higurashi, killer loli fetish. Second season of Fighting Beauty Wulong, martial arts fighting chick fetish. First season of Himawari, ninja fighting chicks fetish. Angel Heart, chicks with guns fetish. Strawberry Panic, lesbian fetish. From Fantasy Empowerment we have Familiar of Zero for yet another time, where a loli tsundere is voiced by Rieko Gimiya in what is yet another light novel adaptation. And we also have Watawararumo no, which for some reason many still love today, even when it's clearly a porn game adaptation regarding a protagonist with no face or memories, so all the honorees can identify with, going around hoarding animal-themed girls. What's that? There is a lot of adventure, action and suspense? Did you people miss how low budget and lackluster were all that? Or is your bar set in the basement level? Next up, referential comedies. Save Me Lollipop, a typical slapstick comedy about a girl turning to a magical cipher and is chased around by a lot of wannabe magicians, giving the whole thing a whole new meaning to the term objectification of women. Hime-sama Goyoring is a plotless comedy about princesses, and the second season of School Rumble is a plotless school comedy. Back then, nobody could shut up about it, but well, what a surprise, nobody says a thing about it now. Could it be because it was never that special to begin with? From sports we have Capeta if you like racing. Next. From Slice of Life, we have Bimbo Shimai Monogatari, which is just the daily lives of poor girls. The second season of Honey and Clover, which again, it's nothing special, but everybody couldn't shut up about it. The biggest offense is how they called it mature because its characters were university students, and yet they behave like they were still in junior high. Hell, one of them even looks like she's 10 years old. And what is their sex life if they're all adults? That's what makes Nana the best josei, you know? This is children playing house and having no idea what they are doing. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, a coming-of-age movie about what the title spoils. It has a supernatural element to it, but it's not overshadowing the main theme, which is fairly basic actually, taking responsibilities and accepting life as it is and stuff. I don't like Hosoda as a director, but this movie is an exception. Nothing is special about it and does the simple things it aims for without sniffing glue and completely derailing from the realm of common sense, not saving the world by playing video games, or traveling the universe and making children sell drugs, or having a family movie about bestiality so a woman can raise werewolves who get to become teenagers in half an hour. For those reasons, I place it as the movie of the season. The second season of Aria. More space gondolier girls not doing anything. This season was following the God is a cute girl fad, with 3 titles following the exact same premise. One was Kamisama Kazoku, about the simple lives of a family of gods. One was the original Haruhi, which initiated the whole thing to be honest. And one was the second season of Oh My Goddess. Out of these 3, Kamisama Kazoku is a throwaway title with nothing special to remember it for. Haruhi took the world by storm, but down to it, it's just another light novel adaptation with close to no real plot and with archetypical characters forming a pseudo-harem masked under a lot of mumbo-jumbo about reality changing and shit. And yes, ending dance. It was the beginning of the Blu-rays, remember? That sort of detail was fresh and attracted all the casuals. It's an okay watch, if you can tolerate the insufferable moe bullshit. Way better than the travesty that was the second season, and not as deep as the movie after that. At least each segment feels different. Oh My Goddess is still one of the best romantic comedies. It has a lot of the same bullshit that plagues such shows, like the lack of an overall plot and a worthless main lead, but the attention to detail, the songs, the magic touches here and there, they make it a fine watch for what it is. And no more! And we are down to the top 5 of the season! Number 5 is Blackjack 21, if you like grim episodic adventures with Tezuka art style. Number 4 is Die Buster, the sequel to the amazing Gunbuster. Okay, it's not that good, but the sheer amount of work placed onto it, as well as the rule of cool only the old Gainax knew how to do right, make it a very enjoyable title, as well as the OVA of the season. Number 3, Uran High School Club, the only reverse harem that is worth your time, probably because it's the only deconstruction of the genre which actually bothered to flesh out its characters. Not super deep, but good enough to escape the mold and make it funny and memorable for what it is. Number 2, Zega Pain. I can't stress enough how underrated this title is. Okay, the pacing is slow, the action is dull, the mechas don't have the best CGI possible, but as a whole the story is just amazing. You can simplify it by calling it The Matrix with mecha, but the amount of time it spends on fleshing out the setting and the characters totally worth your time. This is the Shinsekai Yori of 2006, and everybody should check it out. And best of the season is Ergo Proxy, the anime that is basically talking about the meaning of life in all sorts of ways. Many find it a bit dull and loose in plot, but again, just like Zega Pain and unlike Blood Plus, after it's over, you will really think it deserved the time you spent watching it. And it has its share of depth and memorable scenes and characters, so it's not like you will only remember it as a concept. Truly wonderful, just like this whole season. Spring didn't have many titles, and yet a lot of them are notable for something, so in overall it's a small yet good batch. That of course doesn't mean it's free of unfortunate titles, all of which had good ideas but really boring execution. I have nothing to say about most of them besides what the premise is about and how it failed miserably, so I'll just give you the names and move to those which I have something specific to say. Planet of the Beast King had the potential to be an amazing action survival adventure with both fantasy and science fiction. The setting was mesmerizing, the premise was captivating, the characters seemed to have so much room for development, and they just time skip everything and offer a rushed ending that doesn't make much sense. So disappointing. But the biggest disappointment was of course the older adaptation of Fate's Day Night. Yes, the one which got remade and will air in a few weeks after I make this video. Of course there were lots of tasteless casuals who loved it for the mess it was, as well as many others who gave it a perfect score because they liked the visual novel. Fucking plebs. Now as for the show itself, it was made by Dane, so it had high cancer production values and the ugliest censorship for a hentai scene ever in the form of a CGI dragon. As for the plot itself, they've basically mixed all the different routes from the novel and made a boring mess out of it, so it's nowhere near the duration and complexity of the source material. In fact, it's not that different from a typical light novel adaptation for the mouth breathers to fub. Not that far away from it, we have the normal fan service shows, which include Gakuen Heaven, gay fetish. The second season of Ginyu Moshiyoku Meine Liebe, more gay fetish. Princess.
One word squared.
Gender bender fetish. Magicano, harem with witches fetish. Then we have a bunch of watch and forget comedies with not much of a plot and random humor. Yoshinanga Sachi no Gargoyle, plotless comedy about a gargoyle protector. Girls High School Students,
Such an original title, isn't it?
plotless comedy with high school girls. Karin, plotless comedy with vampire girls. Magical Pokan, plotless comedy with monster girls.
Vampire girls included.
Disgaea, comedy with demons.
And based on a very nice video game, I must say.
Binchutan, cute farmer girls doing cute farming. If you want more sport shows to watch, you can find here the second season of both Ring no Kagero
Which is about boxing,
and Major.
which is about baseball.
If instead you want episodic occult horror, you can go for the first season of Hellgirl. And now we reached the top 4 titles everybody still remembers fondly today. At the 4th place we find Eureka 7, which is mostly favored for the character chemistry and the funky visuals than anything else. The plot is still the usual bones, we have no idea what we're doing. But all things considered, they managed to hide its problems up until the end. Of course, the sequel made it obvious how the story was bullshit all along and people were just watching it for the cute romance anyways. It's fun for the casuals who want a good adventure-romance, but for critical thinkers like me, this show is slow, messy, and I found no interest in kiddie romances. 3rd place is the first season of Mushishi, which is still considered to be top 10 material by a lot of people. And granted, it is very mature, very well animated, has a neat theme, and doesn't trash its credibility with fan service. On the other hand, it doesn't have a plot, which means there isn't any character development. All episodes are about slight alterations of the exact same idea, so it does become tiresome after a while. Plus, it also feels silly the way it plays out like a crazy conspiracy.
It's all the Mushi's fault, man. They are everywhere and they control everyone. The clouds are mushy, the trees are mushy, you are mushy too.
2nd place goes to the first season of Black Lagoon, which, as I stated in an earlier season of the same year, it is by far the best Chicks with Guns anime and oozes with the rule of cool. As for the best title of the season, I nominate Achiwa Shispak. It is a Korean movie with very unusual art style and a theme that is basically a vulgar and bloody parody of consumerism. It's pure schlock action, so it's not for everyone, but compared to everything else that came out this season, it stands out the most and nothing else comes close to what it's about. Artistic, bold, funny, exciting. What anime are supposed to be about. Winter had 2 interesting titles, with everything else being pretty passable. At this point, the big 3 were stealing all the spotlight in action adventures, while everything else in the same field wasn't radical in any way as means to stand out somehow. They were too easygoing despite their interesting premises, and thus the audience had no real motivation to follow them, instead of just focusing on the popular ones. When it all boils down to seen one, seen them all, then you will just go for the stuff everybody's watching and condemn everything else to fade from memory pretty fast. Hear that, anime industry? And then we have the ever-present fan service section, which is again nothing but forgettable shows that are defined by done-to-death fetishes rather than premises or characters. No point in naming them, just enjoy the pictures before moving to the next batch. Fan service everywhere. Here is a couple of comedies you will watch and forget because they are plotless and do nothing to expand their content beyond giggles. Here is a tetralogy of sports you will watch and forget as well, because if you want to see teamwork and friendship, you might as well watch some fighting shonen where there is some sort of thrill and risk going on if somebody loses. And yes, Kinnikuman is technically a fighting shonen with gore fighters on top of that, but it's presented in such a comical way that it loses its appeal as far as action goes and comes down to simply liking the sport. And I don't like sports. Ayakashi is definitely not forgettable. It is actually a decent anthology of occult horror stories. The problem with it is, of course, that none of its stories last long enough for you to bind with the characters or the situations. Okay, one of them did actually do that, but only because later on it got its own separate show, and the main character was cool, so why not remember it? The Slice of Life section doesn't have any standouts either, but it sure had lots of unorthodox shows for its kind. Rescue Wings is about the daily missions of a rescue crew. It's not heavy on action or suspense, and the characters are very bland, but at least it's something different for a change. No more schools and all that shit. Looking Up at the Half Moon seems to be yet another romance thing, but at least it's about sick people, has magic, and doesn't last longer than it needs to be. Yakitate Japan is about bakery, which makes it cute to follow. Rec is about voice actors who begin the story by having sex. Haha! Glass Mask is a very well done, but also incomplete story regarding an aspiring actress. After that, we have the new version of Guyver. It is fairly dull compared to the OVAs from the 80s and doesn't transmit the same dark and gorish feeling from the manga. It's not bad, but it plays out as a simple action show instead of being heavy on campy horror. And now for the 2 titles which I said are worth it. One is No Ain, a well-done action mystery regarding different timelines coming together. Think of it like Steins Gate without every retarded fan service. It has its issues though, the animation is not consistent, in many parts it feels minimalistic or experimental, and the characters lack vitality and quirks to be memorable. Regardless of all that, once you finish it you will realize it is good for what it is. As for the best of the season, I nominate Akagi for being about the thrill of gambling. It's not as good as Kaiji because the protagonist is OP, so you'll never feel sympathy for the guy. Also, if you don't already know the rules of the game they are playing, it will be impossible to understand what is going on. Aside from those issues, very good at being suspenseful. And since the video came out short, I will also give you the tops of the year. From the 4 candidates for Anime of the Year, Black Lagoon and Akagi are just rule of cool and lack substance. Ergo Proxy and Welcome to the NHK are both amazing and only a step away from masterpieces. The only reason I find the latter to be better is because it's far easier to identify with the characters and the situations they are part of. So there, Welcome to the NHK is the best series of the year. From the 3 candidates for Movie of the Year, Paprika and The Girl Who Leapt Through Time are way too easygoing for their own good. I like my anime being bold and exciting, and that is why Aachi wa Shispark stands out and wins easily here. As for the best OVA, Saint Seiya is just an average action show. It lacks the over-the-top antiques found in Die Buster. There you go, OVA of the year, and is also a candidate for the previous year. Another update where I mention the things that changed in ranks and tops. 2008 is the first year where everything remained exactly the same, so here are the winners in quick succession. 2007 has one change, and that is the downgrading of Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei from 7 to 3. I used to like its social critique, but just like it happened with The World Has Declined and Kuchu Buranko, I care less and less about episodic comedies that do nothing with their theme besides ephemeral jokes. I will even remove it from my tops because I got sick of shaft visuals and Shimbo's self-indulgence bullshit. Out you go, you piece of modern bullshit! And now for the winners. 2006 has no changes, besides me removing from my tops yet another title. As much as I liked Noain for its ambiguous take on time travel, and as much as I consider it better to what Steins Gate did with its date sim bullshit, it is still a very boring watch that stretches its good ideas 5 times more than it needed. So out you go, Noain, you are too dull to be with the elites. And now for the winners.